With Board Gosh Energy.
Hurling. It's anyone's game.
Welcome along to the Hurling Pod. It is the last episode of Season 2, so this is going to have proper last day of school energy about it. Paul Murphy, how are we getting on?
Good, Will. How are you?
James Skehill, how are we?
Right.
Well, that brings us to announcements. I promised on Twitter earlier that we would have 2 announcements, so we'll get to announcement number 1. Announcement number 1, James Skehill, your brood has grown by 1 more.
It has. We had a baby girl on Thursday called Robin. It was quite the experience, lads. So Grace, obviously, I've very little to say on how things go, right? So she decided to do what's classed as a home birth. So this is all new to me, obviously, but it was quite the experience, I have to say. And she is way tougher than I am. But it was actually very nice, I have to say. Yeah, so she was born Thursday afternoon.
So firstly, congratulations. The second natural follow-up question here would be, why a home birth for child number 3 and not for the first 2 girls?
The first one, I think, because I think, I hope I'm not speaking on return here, but just,
You probably are, but go on.
You're kind of that trepidation with the first, you know what I mean? You're not sure about how this whole process goes because you haven't done it before, obviously. So you want to be in the hands of professionals and have every kind of, I suppose, emergency item available to you. Whereas the second one, she planned to have a home birth, but she was like 17 days early, and that coincided with the midwife being on leave. So she had to go into the hospital. But then, second was born in a toilet in the hospital. Yeah, that was great. And then the third, she goes, no, definitely have the third as a home birth. So yeah, we don't do it easy, like. Let's make it a bit more exciting than the standard birth.
You're doing a huge amount for the Capitagle Camogie team, though, in fairness to you.
I am, yeah. The full backline covered now.
Full backs are covered now at this stage.
Yeah.
None of them are going to be goalkeepers then, no?
No, I'm not doing with them.
There's no glory in being a goalkeeper.
My eldest girl is only 4.5, and she's gone down and started training early. And she's fully intent on going the goals.
Go ahead.
And then she comes home after, let's say, one of the sessions, was it last week, the week previous, and she goes, Daddy, I was in goals, yeah. And she goes, I'm better than you. And I said, that wouldn't be hard. I'm better than you.
So was her intention to go into goals purely to be better than Daddy, or was she naturally drawn towards the goals anyway?
I think she's obviously she's attended some of the games, the club games that I played last year, and she's just behind the goals. So I think she's probably drawn to it from looking at me, and also she's not bad at it. I'll give her that. She's not bad, and she's not afraid of it. Whereas other kids don't want to go in the goals, as you can, even with the soft touch balls, the really big soft ones. So a lot of the kids won't go in. So she's happy to go in and has the red helmet and is intent on staying there, but I have to get her out there. I don't want her going to goals.
When your Galway career finished, were you ever tempted to go out the field? Because I was in Mungret yesterday at the charity game where they were raising money for the Children's Hospital in Crumlin, and Owen Kelly had gone into goal because at this stage he was saying, look, the legs, once he's gone past 40, isn't carrying him enough, so he goes in goals and does a job for his team, continues to play senior hurling. So that's understandably goes to switch there. Yeah. Nicky Quaid likes to play his club hurling out the field. He was injured, so couldn't play yesterday, but was there watching, and he was saying he kind of enjoys being out the field and getting the chance to do it at the club. When you finished with Galway, were you in any way tempted to go, hey lads, I could do a job for you out the field?
Not at the time, because I suppose in terms of replacements that we would have had, that was 2020, Will. So that was, let's say, obviously 3 years ago. The two keepers we have, second and third choice at the moment, are young guys. They're like 19 and 20. So they weren't quite at the age at the time. Whereas now you'd say, yeah, I could shoot outfield and have 2 very, very good replacements behind me. But it's just that the body would say no. The game is too fast. Like it is, like if this was 10 years ago, there could be a chance of it. But nowadays, like even senior club hurling in any county is extremely, extremely fast. So I wouldn't have the pace to play into our system for sure, because our forwards are nippy, fast lads, so I wouldn't fit in very well there, and I wouldn't go on the backside there. It'd be too slow. I'd be drawing the main slaps like Murphy just be at now last weekend. Not for me, no. And sure, look at it. Like the joke used to be, if I went outfield, I could score X, but then we'd concede Y. So it wouldn't be it'd be kind of counterproductive. And plus, there would be the possibility of excessive fouling. Put it that way, yeah.
You've started okay in the club championship though as well, Skehill. I saw you were 6th on the power rankings before the championship got underway. So I was wondering if that was going to get stuck up in the dressing room at some point. So it was the Backdoor podcast once upon a time. I think it's now the Maroon and White podcast. Had you in 6th place, and I was there thinking, you know what, they've gave St. Thomas's a good run in the last 2 or 3 years. Maybe they should be higher than 6th. So how did that go down in the dressing room?
I'd say a lot of the lads didn't really make note of it. I saw it right, and I was going, geez, okay, fair enough. We'll keep that in mind. Now, in fairness, we haven't won the championship. You know, we didn't get to the semi-final last year, so it's hard to argue with these things. But it's not about how you start, Will. It's about how you finish.
Unlike fancy football or fancy hurling in this case, Murph, as you would say.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah. Skehill's still reeling over that one.
Just like I still go back to a decision where I took out Evan Nyland. Like, what was I doing? Like, why?
That was after. I think that was the week after the Galway Kilkenny match where he actually scored about 12 points, wasn't it?
No, I didn't put him in for the first game for the when he played the Wexford game, the first game. He shot the lights out. I don't know what he got. He got like 10 or 12 points, as he said. Then I put him in, and he played before the Kilkenny game. Didn't shoot the lights out. Then I took him out. Shot the lights out again. And I was like, jeez, I just didn't help myself at all. And I gave you a clear lead.
Yeah.
Well, you know how you justify that to yourself, Skehill? You go, I'm the reason he's scoring quite well. Because if he's in my team, he's going to get injured or he's going to be off form. When I don't have him, he'll score. So it's better for Galway overall. Yeah.
But we didn't win the championship. And I wouldn't mind, Murph. If you bet me by 500 points, I'd say, all right, fair enough. But you didn't beat me by a lot. Like,
What was it in the end? It was only
30. So technically speaking,
I don't think it was that close. I don't think so.
I think I'll have to get VAR and check this.
Well, the only thing, it was resigned to the ashes basically after the semi-final. So I don't think it was only 30. And then you just copied my team, leaving yourself no chance to actually beat me. So
no, listen to me now. I didn't copy your team. So let me see.
You were the one who said you copied my team.
Well, our teams were very, very similar, okay? I finished with 1795 points, obviously.
Yeah.
And Mr. Murphy finished with, where are you now? I have to go find you now.
That's a worrying sign. That means he's a couple of pages above you.
Oh, shit. Sorry, excuse me. You finished with 1928. Damn it. So, okay.
It's more than 30.
So, 133. Okay. Yeah, next topic, Will. Keep going.
Yeah, no, we can keep going. We'll do the second announcement in a moment. But Murph, Danesford, how have you started championship then?
We got bet by Mulnavat yesterday. I think it was about 8 points in the end. But they were just much stronger than us. We stepped up from intermediate now from last year. And Mulnavat have just been a consistent senior team for last year. The bet O'Loughlin's last year to lock O'Loughlin's out of the championship. And O'Loughlin's pretty much every year would be county contenders as well. So it's just everybody wants a good start, obviously. Everybody wants to get the 2 points on the board, whether it's senior, intermediate, junior, whatever it is. And but there's been a few results, O'Loughlin's bet Tullaroan by 6 points, and Tullaroan, I think a lot of people would be tipping as this year could be the year that Tullaroan actually go and win a county championship potentially. They're certainly.
Was it last year they were back in the senior final, or was the year before? Last year?
No, I don't think they were in. Jesus, you have me now. No, I think they're beating the semi-final last year. Ballyhale actually bet them last year in the semi-final. But even, I suppose, you'd look at Tullaroan and you'd be kind of saying there's development in that team to go at Ballyhale. Particularly last year, because people were looking at Ballyhale going, these lads only get stronger the closer to get to the final, kind of like Limerick. So you're kind of looking for a team that would kind of relish that sort of challenge. And I think early days people would look at Tullaroan and say they're a very proud club, very proud bunch of people as well, and they'd relish that just to get going for them, So but no, look, I suppose from our own side, we didn't get to win at the weekend, but look, there's 4 more games to go at now, and look, it's just do or die kind of stuff with the senior in Kilkenny. Again, every county has, I suppose, or the top counties do have competitive senior championships, but I suppose in Kilkenny with 12 teams there's not a big safety net. You really have to be kind of winning your matches early doors. And if you're outside kind of what would be perceived as maybe the top 4 in Kilkenny, everybody else is kind of really just duking it out after that to try and keep out relegation first of all, and then I suppose have a tilt at a quarter-final, semi-final, push on from there, because the last few years with Kilkenny, we've seen the bigger teams, the likes of Ballyhale and these, not because they've had, let's say they went well previous years, they maybe don't go so well at the start of the league, maybe find themselves in relegation, and then there is suddenly a big team in relegation who will happily kickstart their year on towards county final from a relegation semi-final, which in Kilkenny, I don't know what way it works in maybe other counties, but you can still go and win the county championship from a relegation semi-final in Kilkenny. So you really just want to stay out of that area, you know. So look at here again. There's 4 more matches to go. A lot can happen, but yeah.
Roughly in 2 groups of 6.
2 groups of 6, yeah.
And what happens? So is the top 2 come out to quarter? Or how does that work?
So you have top 4 are basically straight through into championship. The top you have the league final then as well. But you also have then the bottom 2 from each group go into a relegation semi-final and play each other, and the winners of that continue on. It's basically first round of the championship. So the winners of that continue on into a quarter final, and then the losers go into a relegation final and basically fight it out then. So there is opportunities to get out of it there, but it's just it's that thing of that kind of squeaky bum time when you get into a relegation semi-final. And it's cagey then, it's just so fucking cagey. The games are tight, so it's
ridiculous. So are you guaranteed 6 games in regardless?
Yeah.
Regardless, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any shadow boxing though, given that 4 teams qualifying? So if you win, say, your first couple of games, you probably know you're going into the knockout stages. Does it kind of drop off a little bit in intensity, or just kind of naturally the rivalries you have there that you're going to have tight matches anyway?
No, I don't think shadow boxing would be ever considered there. The games are really competitive, and I don't think, because it's such a short window and teams just want to keep their form and keep the confidence up within the teams, that there's no real room for shadow boxing. You want to get through, and you kind of maybe don't want to give the mental edge to another team by maybe putting out what we perceive as not a stronger team in the end of the league, because you could be facing these lads anyway in a few weeks. So I haven't seen it now. All I've seen would be the likes of the stronger teams potentially being able to rest a player that might be carrying a knock, whereas the other teams would have to really play that player. If it's a player on the Kilkenny team, you'd nearly have to play them, because each match is so important to the teams that are not consistently in the top 4. Do you know what I mean? So it's the shadow boxing is rarely done. Even by the likes of Ballahale or these teams, it's rarely done, because it's not. It'd be too much of a gamble really to take.
I missed Spurs' 3rd group game, so went to 3 rounds, played now in Offaly at this stage, lost to Rhinus on Friday, but Burr won their first 2 rounds, so a bit like that, Burr should really be qualified already, even with a couple of games to go in the group. So, and then a bit like that, the intensity kicks in when it gets to quarterfinals after that. But a lot of the good work was done without Owen Cal while he was injured for the first couple of rounds, so we should be fine for the knockout stages. It brings us round to announcement number 2. We're getting on Laois, lads. We're going to Laois, Murph, in a few weeks' time for the first week of September. Wonder what's on. Little old festival in Stradbally, and we're going to be there.
Yeah, that's a big one now, in fairness. Ourselves and the Killers headlining Electric Picnic.
On Sunday, yeah. You lose Lewis Capaldi and you get the Hurling Pod.
You get the boys. Yeah, we hit the big time now. I always knew coming out of Danesfort I'd play Electric Picnic sometime.
It's a slightly different vibe scale, EP, versus, say, the live shows we've done before, where people are coming to see the show and are probably big hurling fans and it's mid-season and whatever else. I wonder how this is going to go down when someone probably on a come down from the night before on a Sunday, or maybe has been at it for 2 days, wanders into the podcast tent on the Sunday and goes, who the fuck are these 3?
Well, that's exactly what came to my mind. When the news first broke within our own group, I immediately put myself into the position of one of the festival goers. After 2 hard days, tired, probably wet, you know what I mean, hungover, and look at these 3 lads talking the hurling championship over.
I'm just trying to picture because obviously we don't know who is on before us or after us or what way the lineup works. But I was just trying to picture you have Blind Boy going on and being all philosophical and telling a few things, and people going in saying, yeah, do you know what, this will be good for my headspace after, listening to whatever for the last while, or people rolling the dice saying, I'm going to Joanne McNally here and Vogue Williams or whatever. But there's definitely going to be lads coming in, nothing, lads and ladies, know nothing about hurling, and here's Skehill talking about the preference of using a size 37 hurler or 31 hurler. So it could be quite niche. It could be quite niche for the Electric Picnic crowd.
I think if you go through it, lads, we've covered a broad range of topics this year. We have,
yes,
not just hurling. We've covered entertainment and television. Obviously, we've covered farming at a time. We've covered politics. We've covered hurling.
Bricklaying.
We've covered the birth of babies. Yeah. So it's like,
that's what I was going to say. It's like if someone walks into that tent, you know the way you're just like you're after getting a hot dog. I don't know if I was at Oxygen 2007 and 2010. So like there's a little lull there where you might have went to another show and you go get a hot dog and you're like, you know what? I'll roll the dice on one of these other tents and you just walk in. But there's like if there's like three lads, one from Galway, Offaly, and Kilkenny, talking about home births in the middle of the tent, and you're just like, you're like, what is this tent? what is this about? And a big off the ball sign behind you. So I would say to someone, if you are coming along, give it about 3 minutes and then walk into the tent and see what we're actually on. It could be the Golden Cleric we're talking about, which Skehill, you don't know anything about, or home births, or what else do we talk about? Off the wall sort of stuff. You get thrown off the Aran Islands. Who's to know, like?
Yeah. It could be. Yeah, and look, the good thing as well is everyone else is going to be sleeping in their tent for the 2 nights before they come in. We'll be nice and refreshed. We'll try and bring a bit of energy to it, and if nothing else, it'll probably be a good place to get a seat on a Sunday afternoon while they're getting ready to go back out and see the acts. So there you go.
There you are. Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah. Look, my intention is to get Skehill to get a selfie with Brandon Flowers at some point, because I think we have one of those performer wristbands as well. So I assume we can just walk around and find the killers at some point in their caravan.
If we can just go and pester really famous rock bands, I'd be happy if that's all we take away from today. Yeah. I don't mind. And we can introduce Skehill to them by saying like he's like the Irish George Ezra or something like this. Have you not heard of this man? James Skehill.
And the good news, tickets sold out for Electric Picnic, I think about a week after they went on sale last year. So we don't even have to promote you guys selling tickets. So if you're coming to Electric Picnic, come to the podcast tent on the Sunday. I'm sure the three of us will probably have the details up of what time we're on at between now and then. But that is Sunday. I think it's the 4th of September. It's definitely the Sunday of EP anyway. Come along and it should be a bit of fun.
How out of curiosity, actually, how many does Electric Picnic hold? How many actually go? Is it like 80,000? Is it 100,000?
I think it's over 100,000 generally. Yeah.
Can we like put this on our like Twitter profiles and LinkedIn and stuff that we've played to like 120,000 people, even though the tent might only hold 1,000?
100%. Even if there's 23 people there and they're just there to hear Skehill talk about watching Father Ted, I'm fine with saying perform to 6 figures at some point.
And just a little asterisk beside it, very small writing afterwards, saying that a potential crowd of 120,000.
Yeah,
I like the way you're thinking. So yeah, that's all to look forward to. Of course, the Hurling Pod is brought to you by Borgosh Energy this year. Hurling, it is anyone's game, promoting inclusivity in hurling. Before we get into our various different categories that we wanted to do for the final roundup episode and some of the questions that have come in, loads of questions come in on Saturday, Skehill. I was not expecting this about Johnny Glynn. At least 4 people tweeted me on Saturday going, he's back. You got to talk to Skehill about this.
Yeah, he's back. He lined up for Ardrahan on Saturday. Excuse me, they played Castlegar in the first round of their championship. Probably people would have maybe sided with Castlegar as being, they've been perennial senior A team for the last number of years. And Johnny Glynn started full forward and he was catching airplanes. Like every ball that went into him, he was catching them. Like he's just a freaking menace. Like I was delighted when I heard he was full forward and the first 6 balls went into him, he caught the 6th of them. You couldn't do anything with him. I said, yeah, that's why I put him full forward in my team for the rest of the country. And performed well. And Ardrahan, they saw it was victory. So a good start for them. Great. Like, talk about a guy to get back into your team, though. Like if you're a club and you're training away in January, February, whatever, going through your league games, challenge games, etc. And actually, just get in Johnny Glynn. I mean, sweet Jesus, like such a guy to get in. It's like it is like having an all-star come back into your team and just make such a huge mammoth difference to it. Like the way in club teams, like one lad makes a huge difference. Can turn the tide for a team, can turn their trajectory. Like that's the kind of ability he has. Like so, and I'd be positive about it. I'd hope this could lead on to greater things. I could hope this could hopefully we see him in a maroon jersey sometime soon next year. Are you like throwing his passport into the Shannon here? Is that part of the plan? I'm going to lock him in Ardrahan, yeah. Just get one of them collars put on like the dogs. When he gets electrocuted, he leaves the country. Just can't. He's going to stay. Yeah, like again, he'd be some addition to have. If somehow, and I presume, let's say that the Henry and his management team or representatives were at the Ardrahan game at the weekend. I'd say they saw him. He's in like Murph. We met him in the Crow Park Hotel. He's quite lean. He's in great shape. So it wouldn't take an awful lot to get him back into probably inter-county shape. Obviously, he's been playing football for New York. So look, it's wishful. It's wishful. I know his career is well set in New York with himself and his wife. So I'm hoping. I leave the doors open for him. the door's open for him. So I'm hoping he comes back and he puts on the jersey next year.
Well, that's one of the things, Murph. I mean, you picked up straight away when you met him in the Crow Park Hotel. This is a colossus of a man.
Yeah, like it's just, I was saying there that when you're on the pitch, like there's loads of big lads around. Like as in when Johnny Glynn would have been coming on, like let's say we would have had the likes of Brian Hogan or someone standing at centre back, or Niall Burke, or these lads. They're all huge fellas. So you don't really get a grasp, and you're only running past lads and stuff on the pitch as well. But he walked through the crowd in the Crow Park Hotel, and he was like miles above lads. But also the width of his shoulders and everything. I was like, Jesus, I've never actually just, I didn't really realize how big he was until I see him coming through here. And then the photo then, like of the three of us was scale. What are you, 6'4" or 5"? Like you're big as well. And I remember after the picture, my wife was like, Jesus, you're tiny compared to those lads. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't look great when I'm standing beside him there, but he's huge. He's a big man, like,
He's very uniform.
And like you can just see the potential in him if he was to come back, that the amount of jobs he could do with that alone, like just with the strength of being a menace like that. I mean, Jesus, he's a big man.
I wasn't expecting it. Go on, Skehill, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say the first place he landed for me is full forward. Really and truly. Yeah. Throw him in there, and like obviously you're pitting yourself against the champions every year. So it's Limerick was thinking, what could he do a job against them? Fire him in there and let them have at it. And like as good and all as every team in the country is, like he's a handful for everyone, for everybody.
Yeah.
So like that's why I'm wishful, but yeah, I give it a 50-50 chance.
Well, see, the thing, Murph, is I kind of expected Joe Canning at the live show to kind of have a bit of a laugh about the idea that Skehill had put him into his hypothetical best of the rest from the country. Yeah. But Canning straight away was like, no, this guy is the ultimate man to field the ball for you. I'm not surprised he picked him. Yeah,
in fairness, I think maybe just because he hasn't been around in a while, we just presume that he's had his feet up and that, he's not capable of coming back and that he may be out of shape. But like, what age is he, Skehill? Is he 29? Is he 30? Like,
he'd be less, would he?
Is he? Like,
yeah, I'd say he'd be 30. I'd hazard a guess.
In terms of physicality, like, I mean, like you're saying, he's playing football for New York there. Like, I mean, he's not sitting around doing nothing, like, and then obviously you would have seen a lot more of him in training in terms of what he's capable of. Like, we see a flicker of it in matches and stuff like that. But like, you remember the years there going back where he was really hitting his peak and he was out, usually kind of left half forward position, lumping balls down and invariably catching them, even though lads were well warned to him at this stage. Like, so, completely, like, it's funny even hearing Joe talking about it as well, like kind of doubling down on what you were saying, Skehill, that, if he was to come back, he provides something that maybe not a lot of players, even in the country, never mind Galway, provide. So, yeah, maybe it's not as mad an idea now as we were kind of making out to be.
He turned 30 last month, by the way. Yeah, so
Skehill, in this case with you now, I think it's the case of a stop clock being right twice a day. Like, you're throwing up shit at the wall, something will stick.
No more. Like watching McGregor say, Mystic Mac, Mystic Jim, Mystic Jim here. I predict these things.
The other one we didn't get to chat about, Skehill, last week because we took a 1 week break just to let things breathe for the football for a week and come back this week. Was that Paul Bellew, the Galway chairman, was speaking about Henry Shefflin's tenure, and he was saying that he's going to stay on at least one more season, but the hope is they'll be there beyond next season as well. So he confirmed that he will be in place for next year, Henry Shefflin, and then he said, quote, Henry is on board for next year, but we're looking at extending it beyond that. Henry has indicated a willingness for that, and so have we. So now it's a matter of finding a mutually acceptable agreement. But it's great he's on board and continued the work that's been carried out so far, end quote. So are you happy, first of all, that Shefflin is staying for at least one more year?
Definitely, yeah, 100%. In fairness, I suppose it's not too long ago, like, whereby, we were in a much different position, let's say 2 years ago, who was going to take over the team, and then we got him. He's been 2 semi-finals, beaten by the eventual champions, obviously. And, he's done good work. And I think when he took over the team, the word transition to be thrown out a bit, But it is, like, he is trying to transition new players into the team whilst maintaining some of the older guard. And probably over the next year or 2 years, if he stays on, more that has to happen. Like, we don't have a situation like you have in the Limerick Sinclairs, where they've got pretty much their set 15, for the last number of years. Like, we have guys that, probably more guys that are going to have to get introduced over the next few months. And I think he's the right man to do it. And in fairness, in Galway anyway, we do be guilty about, like, having unrealistic expectations. I'll put it that way to you sometimes, right? And let's say after the game against Limerick, we thought, we change things, we change personnel, change whatever. But the management team we have at the minute, between Henry and his whole management team as a whole, the backroom and all inclusive, etc., is brilliant. Like, it's brilliant. You've some of the best people that you can possibly get in any county. So I'm quite content that he's staying. I hope that he's that all the backroom team can stay with him. Because again, it's a difficult job being in county management from a time perspective, and that's what people forget too as well. It's like that. Like, Henry's travelling from Kilkenny, what's that, 2.5 hours, leaving 4 or 5 again. Yeah. Is it more, is it?
That's 3 hours, yeah.
Is it 3 hours, yeah? See, I'm East Galway, so I suppose, but when he's travelling to City, probably it's 3 hours. And was he 4 or 5 children? Do you know, so like, it's a difficult task. So like, you'd be saying, instead of Richie, but you'd be saying like that it's good that I suppose Paul Bellew and his team have managed to, I suppose, hold him for the next 12 months at a minimum. And let's revisit again after that. So I think the hurling public as a whole in Galway are all very, very happy that he's staying, because, as I was saying to you, he's very well got on a personal level and a professional level. So let's keep it rocking. Get behind him.
There was a lot of articles, Skehill, kind of saying, maybe Galway have not built on the progression of, say, year one, or a feeling that this year maybe wasn't as good as last year. Now you've had kind of a month since Galway have exited the championship. What would be your response, say, to that idea that maybe Galway haven't actually pushed on from 2022?
Yeah, but I suppose pushed on is, I understand what people are saying. I get what they're saying. Like, progression for us would have been get to a final, or win the Leinster final. I was more upset last year in the manner in which we lost the Leinster final than I was this year, would you believe? Yes, because I thought we put ourselves into a position to win this year, whereas last year we didn't really. So, like, you could say we progressed slightly. Then after the final, the way Limerick operated in the second half, the way that wasn't Kilkenny didn't capitulate. Limerick were just awesome. And that kind of made me feel a bit better about Galway's performance, to be honest. In the semi-final, I was saying, yeah, look, Limerick can do this to anyone, truthfully speaking. So I think our progression is going to be incremental when you're coming up against a team like Limerick the whole time. You're not going to be saying to yourself, right, we're going to win the championship. Like, we've a 7 out of 10 chance, 8 out of 10 chance. Like, it's a difficult proposition against Limerick in their current form. So I think the next level of progression, I think we have to get some kind of silverware, whether it be like a league or Leinster final at a minimum, whilst contesting heavily for the championship. That's the next level. So I think an awful lot will be told, in 7 or 8 months' time when the provincials roll around again. But I wouldn't discount what people say about how the year unfolds, because sometimes they say you're only as good as your last performance, which I get, and our last performance wasn't hectic, but ultimately it coincided with coming up against one of the greatest teams of all time. So that has to be put into perspective also.
Murph, I assume the feeling in Kilkenny is, that's grand, he can keep the seat warm in Galway for a couple of years. Sure, we've our management in place now at the moment, and Henry can come back at some point and be Kilkenny manager.
Yeah, I don't think anybody. I think the feeling in Kilkenny is nobody's looking that far down the line at the moment. Like, there's been loads of lads from that team, that Kilkenny team of his generation, that have entered management and are really good options down the line. I think that's just what people are putting it as, because people are really happy at the moment with Derek Glynn and the management and what they've done and the feeling around Kilkenny. Like, obviously disappointing to lose the All-Ireland, but I think people, like I said at the time, kind of made peace with the fact that it was a really good Limerick team. So people aren't looking around at the moment going, okay, will Derek stay X amount of time? How long will he stay? And who's replacing him? No one's even looking at that yet. Everybody's kind of going, but you know what? We had a good year. Where are we going from here? What are we going to do next in terms of, bringing players in and all these different things? But I think just people are kind of, I suppose, safe in the mind that whatever Derek Glynn decides to do down the road, that there's lads out there, not only Henry, but the likes of Eddie Brennan, these lads who have proven that they're really good, managers, and likes of David Herity and these lads. So if we were to go down the road eventually of that, whenever that day comes, there's lads out there. So of course Henry's always going to be in that conversation. I think people will always want Henry involved in Kilkenny hurling at whatever stage. But like, speaking for myself and everybody in Kilkenny, like, you wish Henry well, obviously, just not beating Kilkenny. Like, you want him to go and achieve what he wants to achieve, because he's given so much to Kilkenny. So it's great to see that Galway have, I suppose, endorsed them even, and that they're saying, look, we want you to kick on, we want you to do whatever you want to do. And I think the big thing for Henry as well is, like, can't forget, this is his first venture into inter-county management, with Galway, and it's a big job to step into. And each year is going to come with its own learnings. And I do agree. The one thing I was going to say, Skehill, while you were talking, or I was thinking of, was that the silverware is the thing now, the Leinster Championship or the league. And I wouldn't differentiate between either. Like, obviously the Leinster, Galway would be hoping to win because it's getting towards the business end of the year. And if you win a Leinster, you're giving yourself to 4 weeks and everything that goes with that. But at the same time, if Galway went and won a league, that would be good as well, because it's a bit of silverware. Okay, it's probably second to the Leinster one, but it's a bit of silverware and it's showing that you're headed in the right direction. So that is the next priority for Galway. And from everything I hear, the Galway players as well are really happy with what's happening and are very supportive of it. And maybe happy to have the voice from outside the county as well at the moment. Maybe that's what's good for Galway. So look, it's great, I suppose, they're talking of 2025, not just kind of going another year to go in 2025. So look, it's I suppose it's a hat tip to Henry, and it's I suppose showing the support that they believe in, that he does have what it takes to bring Galway to the next step.
Related question to you, Murph, because a few people brought it up on the YouTube after the live show last Monday week after the All-Ireland Final. Were we a bit soft on Kilkenny generally after the final?
In what way? That we probably...
Were we a bit easy on them? Because the focus seemed to be Limerick blew them away in the second half. No team could have lived with them, and therefore there wasn't much criticism of Kilkenny. After having a couple of weeks to think about it now, were we a bit soft on them at the time?
I don't think so. You could look at Kilkenny and say Kilkenny lost the game, but like that, I think that would be doing a disservice to Limerick, to be honest, because Limerick, for that last half an hour, genuinely saying it, I don't think any other team would have done anything different. I mean, I think people might wax lyrical and say, oh, my Clare team or my Tipperary team or my Cork team or my Galway team we would have done this, we would have done that. I was sitting beside Kieran Carey, and I remember just saying to him, just turning to him, kind of going, like, you're unbelievable. And he was just saying nothing at this stage. He was just reveling in what this Limerick team were producing. And I think, to be fair, there's some moments where you have to turn and look at other teams and go, you just down tools and you didn't do enough. But there's other times you have to look at the winning team and go, you are just the better team. And like it even goes back to what we're talking about, the club matches there. Like, I mean, we were beaten yesterday by 8 points. You're just looking at their team going, no, you were just much better than us, and that's it. And yeah, we have things to work on. But at the end of the day, year after raising the bar, and that's what Limerick did. They completely raised the bar. And we talk about teams peaking. They started kicking on in the semi-final against Galway and, pushed on. But like in the All-Ireland Final, what they did in the last half hour, I don't think any team has produced that kind of performance in the last 5-6 years. I'm trying to think of an equivalent performance of the second half. The only one I can think of is Limerick against Tipperary, where they're down by 10 points in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Like, just something that no other team could produce. And like we saw in the comments as well, where people are saying, are Kilkenny in a worse off position this year now, or a better position than they were in the All-Ireland in 2022? I don't think it's about are Kilkenny in a worse off position. I think they're actually in probably a better position, but the scoreline doesn't reflect it, because Limerick are after kicking on. It's not a case of that Kilkenny are after slipping away from Limerick or Galway or anybody else. It's a case that Limerick have now, everybody's asking the question, are Limerick, have they peaked? Is this their peak at the moment, or are they going to fall off? They answered the question in the final by actually stepping up another notch and stepping away from the pack. So I don't think we were soft in Kilkenny, because even my own feeling coming away from the game was just that I was proud of what Kilkenny did, and I was able to just accept that, Limerick were just awesome. They were just absolutely brilliant. So I think you could look at it negatively, and you could dive into things, and you could be, very hard on Kilkenny if you wanted to be, if you want to go out your way. But I think, no, you would have just been doing a disservice to how good this Limerick team were.
Not asking you to go out your way here, Skehill, but were we too soft on them?
I don't think so, because I remember speaking to Ger Gilroy on Off the Ball AM after the 2021 final when Limerick beat Cork. And I was kind of critical of Cork in the way that they set up defensively. Like the kind of the floodgates opened in the first half, and all the goals were Gilroy's sake, and it was very, very badly structured. For the Kilkenny game this year, I was like, Kilkenny weren't badly structured. Like, they were just beaten. That's really it. Like, and you can take that on a personal level. Let's say if I'm beaten by a better team, having dived with my boots on, I can't say a word. You know what I mean? I can't say a word, because some days you just have to put your hands up and say, yeah, they're better than us, and simple as that. And I just think Kilkenny, like, again, pose the same question as them. Did they progress? And I would say yes, they did progress. Yes, they're beating the final, but they progressed with a new management team, which is a major change in any kind of setup, not to let alone a senior intercompetitive team. So they've progressed, to say, under new personnel, and they'll get better, I'd imagine. But Limerick just produced a performance collectively from a coaching perspective and from a hurling perspective that has never been seen before. The level of dominance they showed in the last 15, 20 minutes, I could only equate back to when Kilkenny bet Waterford in 2008, I think it was. I think it was 2008, yeah. That was a level of dominance that I'd never seen up to that point. So that's what I'm saying about Limerick. That's the levels we're talking about. We're talking about that level of performance whereby no team in the country has done it in the last number of years. So it's very hard to say, Kilkenny were, they did X, Y wrong, lads gave up, lads, etc. That didn't happen, to be honest. They were just completely outclassed by a better team, and that team is much better than everybody else. It's a simple fact at this stage.
Well, there you go. I said I'd bring it up because there's a few people did bring it up in the comments and thought that maybe Kilkenny were getting off a bit light because all the focus was on the 4 in a row. So I wanted for us to look at a few kind of different topics before we got to the questions which have come in from the listeners. And again, loads of them have come in across the Instagram and the Twitter this afternoon since we sent out the bat signal. So best game of the year, lads. Murph, I'll give you a first shout. What was your best game of the season we've just seen?
I had a toss-up between the first Clare Limerick game and the McDonagh final. Granted, the standard of hurling was different in both, but for the sheer excitement, I went with the McDonagh final. It was just, I remember watching it just going, this is an absolutely crazy game. Like, Offaly took off at a great pace. Carlow come back into it then. And I remember we were actually hurling a match locally that evening, and I had to go out to the car. I was raging. It was going to extra time because I just wanted to see it finish. I had to go to the car and I was listening to it on the radio, old school, and it was just as exciting on it. So for sheer excitement and producing what we probably want to see from the likes of McDonagh finals, in that, like, if you're turning it on, you're going to see a brilliant game. It was a tough call between both of them, but I just think, fair credit to both teams. It was a brilliant, exciting match. And okay, like I said, not to the same standard of Clare and Limerick, but nevertheless, brilliant game. So my game of the year is the McDonagh final. Yeah,
I'm kind of inclined to go the same direction. Excruciating finish, and in very, very similar circumstances. I was at the McDonagh Cup final up until 70 minutes finished. Then, I think I told you at the time in the pod back then, I had to go to an event in town in Dublin. So I was trying to watch it in the RTE player, and for some bizarre reason it was geo-blocked and I couldn't actually see it. So similarly, I'm sure you were on KCLR. I put on the Midlands 103 commentary to listen to it. And at all times, I kind of felt like this game was drifting towards penalties. And eventually I got to the hotel I was going to and saw the end of the game and got to see the last 3 or 4 minutes of the match when I got in. And it seemed like it was destined for that. And it was score for score for score. And then Carlow produced the score to win it at the end. It was proper Roy the Rover stuff if you were a Carlow fan watching the game. Particularly when it felt like, I think towards the end of normal time, that maybe the game had swung in Offaly's favour because of the nature of their second half comeback. And then David Nally picked up that injury where he'd thrown his arm in to try and block the ball, and it looked like maybe there'd be an opportunity at the end where Offaly had a couple of frees to try and win it in normal time. And I'd agree with you, the standard of hurling was not quite the same as some of the matches we saw at senior level this year, but for blow excitement, for goals, for controversy, refereeing decisions, for players putting on the line during the game, hard to beat that Joe McDonagh Cup final for just sheer entertainment. And it was on those as well, Skehill, with the McDonagh Cup final that day, because it was on its own slot on the Saturday, and because it was on TV, in a weird kind of way, it probably got more prominence than when it was before a provincial final before.
Yeah, well, I suppose when it's on before provincial finals, it's obviously perceived as the second year and the second kind of event, the warm-up event. That's not to be disrespectful, that's just reality. So when it's a standalone fixture, it's given the platform it serves. And I came in on the game probably 15 minutes after I started, and I just couldn't turn it off. I couldn't stop watching it because it was tit for tat, and it was the strangest feeling game because you thought Carlow will run away with it, then Offaly come back, and then the way it finished, where Offaly had a chance at the end to try draw it and bring it to penalties. I was certain it was going that route, and it didn't happen. Tricky proposition for Offaly to contend with, but like a great game, and I think it's good for our game, as a whole, hurling as a whole, when these type of games are showcased. Granted, you can say there wasn't a huge crowd, but that's irrelevant. What we're looking at really is the product, and the product that Carlow and Offaly produced was excellent. So the more, I suppose, that people can get to view that and get to see it, only does the game good. So, and it was a great advocate for the actual championship itself, the McDonagh Championship. The only thing is, I suppose, that for those two teams, particularly, not to put it down on it, is that they had two daunting tasks in such a short time span again after that, with regards to taking on the two teams that did. So But I think that's actually gone now. I think they're toying with that to remove that situation.
Looks like it's gone, Skehill. Yeah. So they have to make a decision on it, I think, in the coming weeks. But all the soundings back from the county boards where they were having the discussions, they're happy enough to. I think the phrase they're using is decouple it from the senior championship. So winning the McDonagh Cup would be the reward in and of itself. So you get the silverware, you're promoted to senior for the next year. But they take out the preliminary quarterfinals, which also might give a bit more wiggle room in the schedule for both competitions as well.
But as an Offaly man, will it say? I'd say you, not to speak for you, but I'd say you would have been content with having the year finish at the McDonagh stage, 100%. Rather than facing down Tipperary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, especially and like none of the losing teams have ever won a game at the preliminary quarterfinals afterwards. So it's such a kind of weird task that you have to go back as a team to go training for 3 to 4 weeks after the McDonagh Cup final to get ready to play against generally the third team from Munster, who'll be maybe licking their wounds after not getting through to a provincial final, but have been hurling at a much stronger level for the whole year. And generally the beaten McDonagh Cup finalists have taken a fair old kicking when it comes to the preliminary quarterfinals. So I don't think there was really any great benefit in it. I would hope, and we'll do our hopes for the 2024 season in a little bit, but I would hope that maybe they could have a look at the calendar for the McDonagh Cup for next season and for it not to feel as rushed as it was, because for teams who went well in Division 2A of the National Hurling League, straight away they were outplaying the first rounds of the McDonagh Cup, and I think it definitely affected Kildare's championship to be going out so quickly after losing the league final to be playing pretty much the next week in the McDonagh, and then it was just so condensed. And then you had the final, and then you had the break to the preliminary quarterfinals. So it felt like the McDonagh Cup schedule was almost being tailored around the Liam McCarthy to a certain extent. So if they do decouple it, I would hope that the organisers of the competition could now sit down and maybe allow the McDonagh to go a little bit deeper into the summer.
Yeah.
Your pick for Game of the Year, Skehill, what would it be?
I went with there was a couple I was tying with, as you well know. It took me a while to decide it. But I went for Clare and Limerick in the group stage of the Munster Championship for a couple of reasons. I suppose the game itself was excellent. They had 2 cracking games the year previous, and this was the first time they're going to meet. Limerick were obviously going for this unbeaten record that Kilkenny had. They hadn't been beaten in Munster since Tipperary beat them back in 2019. So, and I think after Clare's performance against Tipperary in this year's championship, people were saying this could be, Limerick could hide them, and they didn't. And I suppose the last 5 minutes was as exciting a period or a passage as you'd get in the whole championship, especially when Shanahan came on and got 2 points, and then the crowd erupted. Like, it was really, and then coupled with the fact that I think John Conlon was his brother getting married the same day or somewhat. So I think it created a good event, but the match itself was excellent. And yeah, look, that was my game. And there was a couple of close seconds. I thought really the Offaly Wexford Leinster under 20 final was really good down in Carlow. That was an exciting game, especially how Offaly had a man sent off pretty early, to be honest, and managed to see out that. That was an exciting game. But yeah, I went for Clare Limerick.
Okay, good picks. Offaly probably overrepresented so far in games of the year, but I won't complain. So 2 of us going for the McDonagh Cup final and Skehill going for Clare against Limerick. Part 1, I would call it, of this year's saga. We'll give you first out then, Skehill, given that we'll go around the tracks each time. Best goal of the year for you?
I think this is going to be a unanimous one, lads, because I went through kind of all the goals that I thought could be nominated, and one just kind of was sticking its head above the parapet, and that was Shane Donnelly's goal versus Kilkenny. It reminded me of, if you remember, Damien Hayes scored one against Tipperary in 2005 on the same side, on the hillside, where he threw, I think it was Hugh Maloney out of the way and barely past Cummins. Very similar here, very similar in the sense that he showed a level of power that you wouldn't really associate with a man of his size. I mean that in a good way. Like if Kyle Hayes did it or Gareth Checker did, you'd say, yeah, he's like Gareth Checker did it to Richard Reid last year in last year's final. You'd say that's because he's a mammoth. He's huge. But Shane Donnelly is not exactly huge, and he turfed off Tommy Walsh, I think it was, and then roofed to pass a fabulous goalkeeper. So, and at the time of the game as well, like that goal was needed for Clare, and it just added to the fixture. So yeah, that was a class goal by a class player. So he's my pick.
Yeah, it's dancing feet, Murph, added in with a little bit of precision at the end of it too.
Yeah, and at the moment, like if you're teaching forwards to score goals, far be it that I'm teaching any forwards to score goals, but like we do speak of like bouncing the ball.
You ever scored a goal? Sorry.
I have, yeah. I scored one. Oh no, for like senior.
No, like for Danesford senior or for not a penalty now.
No, I scored one minor for Kilkenny against Dublin Leinster final in 2007. I scored one late enough on. Other than that,
Were you playing in midfield?
I was playing centre back. Did a bit of a Dahi work on it. Then like Dublin were kind of beating as well. I think they pushed me in. No, maybe I was midfield then at that stage, and I just went up and just got a ball and hung it up. But the game was over at that stage. So Jesus, it's back from. I played when I was playing Junior B for Danes Fort. I was back when I was about 15. I'd say. I scored a few goals as wing forward, but Jesus, I can't remember the last time I scored a goal since then. But anyway, Shane O'Donnell. Not to get off the anyway, as I was saying, Shane O'Donnell, I just got very aware that there's Clare fans probably listening going, Jesus Christ, the one time we're talking about Shane O'Donnell here. No, but the thing about it, now we talk about balls being too good of a height for keepers and they saving them and all these different things. But this was just old-fashioned roofing the ball into the net, which we all love it. We all love seeing the net burst, a fella sticking it in. But I remember, when I was watching that in Croke Park, it was just the way he ran on, pushed Tommy Walsh off. But then the way he just hung it, as a supporter, I just, like a Kilkenny supporter, I just kind of laughed at the time because it was just such a brilliant goal. You were kind of going, Jesus, you can't have any arguments about that. But it was just everything about it. What wasn't to like the determination when he got the ball, the Clare fans sensed that there could be something on here and maybe sensed that he might take him on and flick it in, kind of Shane O'Donnell style. But then just went with the leaning into Tommy Walsh, throwing him over. And I can't remember who was actually covering back, but there was another defender, I think it could have been Killian Buckley, who was covering back. And Tommy Walsh falling over kind of took Killian Buckley out of the game as well. And then just hanging it up, about an inch or two under the crossbar. It's class. Brilliant goal. You love to see it. Except when it's happened to your team, obviously. But
there was kind of a few others I'd considered for different reasons rather than the aesthetic brilliance of the O'Donnell goal.
I can feel it coming.
Come on,
No, the one that obviously jumps to mind would be just the drama of Buckley's goal in the Leinster final. It's not the cleanest strike in the world, Skell. I'm not going to claim that in any way, but it's just... No, but it's one of those things that happens at the end of a Hollywood movie where the ball comes out, it gets kicked out to an unlikely player to score the goal. Yeah. You're thinking, there's no way this is going to go in. Surely Galway will get a block on this, or if not, the goalkeeper is going to save it. There was a certain kind of dribbly quality to it, to how it went in as well. It took a bounce before it hit the net. But because of the circumstance and because of the excitement of it, that goal is very exciting. And if I'm going to be totally biased, one of the ones that I really enjoyed during the year too, which was a fantastic finish, was Adam Screeney's goal in the game you were talking about, Skell, which was the Leinster Under-20 final, where the ball gets popped off by Cormac Egan to him. And I'm sure, again, the Wexford defence are probably thinking the angle's not exactly in his favour here, but Screeney just kind of readjusts his feet and bangs it into the top corner on the far side. So it was just a kind of a lovely, pure strike about that goal as well. So I'm sure, again, people get involved in the comments or send us a tweet and say you've forgotten some wonderful goals during the year that you haven't put in here, but there are a couple that just jumped to mind.
Well, another one I think honourable mention, and it's not so much even the goal itself, but Carl Mannion's goal against Limerick, that was a great goal. And what I think was so good about it was Kevin Cooney's flat pass, bouncing it off the ground. If that's such a small window to get that ball away to Carl Mannion, and then Carl Mannion has to take it perfectly. Ball is bouncing, has to take it and stay running. And then even as well at that, you'd nearly give out to Mannion 9 times out of 10 for taking a shot from where he took it from as well, because he was a little bit further out and he hit it that hip height at Nicky Quaid. So that was a great one. And I think what actually was really the best part of it was Kevin Cooney's pass. That was brilliant.
Yeah. And the pickup, how hard it is to do that pickup with one hand.
Yeah,
and the ball going away for it. That was some pickup.
And Cooney had to place it literally 3 yards in front of Mannion, so Mannion didn't have to break stride. If he breaks stride, he's caught, So it's just the fact the flat pass was the hardest part of that whole goal. Yeah. So that's another. I'd also like to mention as well, Will, the way he said the dribbly quality. As if that's an endearing factor on a goal like that. I loved how dribbly it was.
No, but it wasn't a pure strike into the top corner, which in a way kind of takes your breath away for a different reason. It was almost it almost added to the tension that it took a bounce on the way in. It kind of it felt like it almost went in slow motion, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Why don't you just get some more salt and put it in my wounds here? Please,
best point of the year. I'll go first on this one because it just stands out as a remarkable score in the All-Ireland Final. Maybe it is recency bias to a certain extent, but for me it's Peter Casey down by the sideline, effectively where the managers walk around at the Hogan stand side, and he just bangs it over with a bit to spare over the crossbar. It was just kind of one of those moments in the All-Ireland Final where it felt like, Limerick are going to win. because they've got players where everything they're hitting is now going over the bar. Mightn't have been the most important point, but it was just an absolutely stunning strike.
Yeah, it was probably a really important time as well, where they were really building momentum, and like a wide there could take a small bit out of their momentum. But like you said, when you just start hitting balls that shouldn't go over sometimes, and they are going over, then you kind of know the belief kind of creeps in there. We're like, yeah, this is our day. And I think you're right, Will, that was a kind of a defining moment where it was like, okay, Limerick they're starting to move on, they're pushing it on here a small bit. But it was like technically and everything, he had so little to work with there that it was just a great score. Yeah. Like
NBA Jam, he's on fire pretty much at that point. And then he went inside and did damage from there as well. So he did a very complete All-Ireland final. Murph, what are you picking as your point of the year?
I'm actually very aware now. I'm nearly getting conscious as if we're trying to shoehorn Offaly into this, which we're not. We didn't actually even speak about it before, what we were picking. But
the great entertainers, Paul. The great entertainers.
Picked Adam Screeney's point, the Leinster under-21 final, or under-20 final. The one inside the 14 where he rises it. And if you watch him, he rises it. He's towards the end line. He turns back and has a look at the goal. And he's about 3 yards from the end line. And by the time he strikes it, he's still inside the 14 from what it looks like. And he, like, for all the world, curls it over. I mean, look, there's only one angle on the shot, so you don't see a whole lot of it. But that was just like in a time now where we're all about, shooting from the angle that gives you the highest percentage shot and all this sort of stuff, like, which we all talk about, of course. Just that there's always that room for that bit of inspiration and score, that bit of hurling with freedom. If you believe you're going to score, pop it over. It was just brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And just kind of showing with the likes of Adam Screeney that the players coming through, that there still is that swagger about them, like, and that they still have this creativeness about them. But that was just an incredible score. Important game for Offaly, expectations on no more than Adam Screeney, a lot of other players, but just out near the sideline on the 14, before the 14, and just taps it over. Like, I mean, that was just, I just thought that was a brilliant score.
I'm not going to lie, Skehill, what was going through my head when he turned back onto his left-hand side for that shot, I thought, pass it back to someone in a better position to shoot.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're hardwired to think now, like, in fairness.
But there's certain players that wouldn't you agree, lads, like, say, if they have that bit of flash or that bit of, that bit of X factor built into them, let them do it. I would never, I presume he's tried that numerous times for his club and for his school and whatnot and probably missed them. Yeah. But like he's the type of player now that I would say, let them. Like, if Glynn takes on that shot, let him. Do you know what I mean? Let him, because they're capable of scoring it in big moments.
But like, I'd even say with that type of score, though, you can only take that when the confidence is up. You can't take that shot when, the confidence is down and you're looking to get yourself into the game, because that's when they go wide, because you overthink it. But like, if you look at it, and not to be dissecting it too much, but it's like, he knows he can score it when he rises the ball and has a look at the goal and he's facing the end line, look at it going, yeah, I think I can score that, turns back and pops it. But like, I'd often be saying, like, when I'm chatting to even, like, club players and stuff, just saying that, like, sometimes things aren't working out for lads and hit two or three wides or whatever. The likes of that shot isn't a shot you should be taking unless you fully believe. So you have to leave it on, like, get your scores that are the easier scores, that are from the better positions. And then when your confidence is up, that moment will just come. It'll just appear to you and take it. But don't try and bring yourself into a game by scoring from the 14-yard line on the sideline. Just doesn't always work. But look, his pump is up. His back was up at that stage. So he's well entitled to take it.
Skehill, what's your point of the year?
I went for the same game as you, Will. I went for I went for Aaron Gillan's point. I think it was the 16th point to draw Limerick level against Kilkenny. I went for probably a couple of reasons. Number one was the passage of play. The commentary was excellent. And then the finish was savage. So, like, you remember, I think it was a Mosty Keown that slipped, and then Dan Morrissey got rocked by TJ. Mike Casey comes out with the ball. First big roar from Limerick, passed it off to Hegarty. Hegarty shifts it. Great first touch by Flanagan. Flanagan sees an outrunner in Gillan. Gillan jinks to his right and pops it over off the left on the Cusack side. Savage. Like, just a savage. And then Marty Morris's commentary, I have to say, was excellent at the time as well. And that kind of added to the whole, I suppose, score itself, the whole passage. So I went for probably, the point was savage, but the passage and the whole collective was class too. So that's what you're looking for in a sport, like, as a neutral, like that. Just them kind of tingly moments whereby it all comes together in a savage passage of play. Sorry, Murph, and Glenn rocks a serious point from a serious player. Like, jeez. There
was something quintessentially Limerick about it as well, Skehill, the way that they actually worked the ball into that position, and then you kind of back Gillan's own individual brilliance to take the shot from. Again, more talk about Screeney, a very difficult shooting position when he takes that shot off.
Difficult, yeah. And I think people don't like when Peter Casey got his point on the sideline, the Hogan side. He was in motion. He was moving forward, right? I don't think people realize how hard it is actually to stand and strike, pivot off your back foot, and strike it. I say probably. As the crow flies, it could have been 55, 60 yards. Do you know what I mean? In that direction. So that's very difficult to do statically. If you've got a bit of motion, it's easier. So, but there's a whole load of things that happen in that passage. Like the first touch from Seamus Flanagan under serious pressure from Tommy Walsh. Great first touch, really, really good. And like if he missed that first touch, the whole play is dead. So like there was a series of things that happened. Like TJ Rock and Dan Morrissey. I haven't seen Dan Morrissey knocked. And TJ rocked him, and then I suppose Mike Casey flicks it out over lad's head and moves it on to even Hegarty. And in small things will catch my eye. You can see when Hegarty gets the ball, Peter Casey is doing this for his hurl, waving him on, as in, come on, let's there's something on here. But then Hegarty shifts it into the 15 corner, and the rest is history.
Fantastic score, Murph.
Yeah, no, great score. And again, you can look at these things, granted you were beaten, but you can look at these things objectively and say, isn't that a brilliant score? Why not? No point in, if I was to sit here and say, oh, no, that wasn't a great score. Sure, it'd be disgraceful. No, they're brilliant scores. And even if you look at the likes of Gillans and Peter Casey's, I'm in my mind's eye now, I'm trying to think back. Gillans one, it's like he steps back and strikes it up into the air, which that ball follows a different trajectory than Peter Casey's one, where he's still moving from what I remember. Casey's moving towards the sideline. As soon as you strike that ball, it curls, and it's curling right for Casey there. So you have to change where you're shooting. Whereas Gillan takes that back from Flanagan and steps back and pops it. That ball is going to go straight. So it's just even the skill of that, which is instinctive for players. They know about it. But Casey's one technically is probably a bit harder because he's moving and has to adjust his body position and knows that, what?
I think, yeah.
I think technically it is because Mikey Butler, I think, is going to block him. And because Casey's moving and he's leaning towards the sideline, leaning back, when he strikes that ball will curl right. I'm fairly sure.
He's a right side player. She'll curl left to right.
Left to right, yeah. So he has to adjust for that. What's harder with Gillan's one is generating the power by stepping back and popping it up into the air. And you're kind of then, because there's, we're really getting into it, but because there's spin on Casey's ball, he can control that a lot better. But Gillan's one, because he's popping it up, whichever way the wind is going, the wind could catch that and take it because there's no spin on the ball. So there's elements there, if you really want to get into it, that you could admire for. They're both very hard in their own ways. But I just think because, let's say, Mikey Butler is a little bit closer to Casey and he's putting the hurl up, and Casey is thinking, I have to start this ball to the left of the post to bring it back in. You're aware that Mikey Butler has the hurl up, and you could send the ball now through Mikey Butler's hurl and he gets a block on it. So I just think there's a bit more there for Peter Casey in a shorter space of time to think of to actually get that ball over the bar. But again, you're splitting hairs here,
By the way, if you have the notebook ready there, Skehill, that was 4 mentions to add. So I think we're up to 60 now at this stage for the season.
Yeah,
I didn't even notice.
I did.
I didn't even notice I mentioned it once, actually. Yeah. Jesus.
I was counting them because I didn't see Skehill writing them down. He was too engrossed in you chatting about spin on the wall. So
I actually thought you were going to say he mentioned Peter Casey a lot there. I forgot about the other man.
I won't lie to you, Will. I was just listening. I love this hurling nerds kind of talk, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't even notice what he said in terms of who he was mentioning. What he was saying.
Now, I heard him. The alarm was going off in my brain, and I kind of went, right, I'll just take these down because Skehill is engrossed. So I think that's an even 60, unless he comes up at some point in the next couple of categories. Moment of the year for you, Skehill?
On the podcast or in the championship?
No, in the championship. We can do pod after that, but in the championship. Do you want a bit of time to think about it and get Murphy?
This is one that caught me, lads. I won't lie. It caught me. I had a couple of smaller ones, option-wise, but I'm not sure.
What moment of the championship?
Yeah, a moment versus a talking point. And you see, this is where I struggle to digress, dissect between the two of them. So,
go on. I'll let you have either of them. Go on.
Okay, huge talking points for the championship for me was obviously the end of the Munster final. Was it free? Wasn't it free? Mm-hmm. That was a huge. I know it's not quite a moment of a year, but it's a mammoth talking point. The Limerick second half performance, 3 points. Again, it's not a moment, but it was captured in time over 30 minutes, whereby it was just probably the best level of hurling we've seen ever, truthfully speaking. And then there was, I had it was back to the minor in 20s, the day in Thurles, just the event. Now, again, it's not called a moment, right? But I just thought that the GA got nearly got lucky where they stumbled upon having to fix these games together, and I just thought it was great. It was kind of a sign of where things might go forward. So I was kind of, I don't have a moment, lads, but I have a few, elements you could say. So pick from that what you will.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that as well, Skehill, because for the last 2 weeks, because everyone's been complaining pretty much off the back of the Jubilee teams coming out at 2:45, and no one really been in their seat before 3 o'clock for the best part of the All-Irelands. Everyone has said, put the minors back in. That is the solution. Put the minor game back in. I'm like, have you not been watching the last couple of years that actually the minor final has been enhanced by not being part of the All-Ireland final day? It hugely benefited from having its own slot in 2021. And this year, and I know we talked about it hugely on this Monday after that Sunday, was that the 20s and the minor actually work brilliantly together because it created a great day in Thurles. And this also creates moments as well, Murph, outside of Croke Park. I know the players want to play in Croke Park and it's great for minors to get a run out there. But think of the benefit to grounds like Semple Stadium and Nolan Park to get to host these All-Ireland finals too. And people not having to worry about getting a ticket. Where I remember how difficult it used to be when a minor team would get to the final and you're in the race with everyone else for the 82,000 tickets and it's very difficult to actually get to go. While this guarantees everyone can go to the minor final. Yeah,
it does. And that is a big consideration, obviously, is that the hunt for tickets then for, like, obviously you want to see the senior final get 82,000 people. And the days that does, invariably it does, obviously, you don't want to be throwing another minor final into that to, let's say, where you have, worst case scenario, 2 teams that neither are involved in the senior final and now there's a scrap for tickets, and it's kind of then, okay, well, how many do we give to the minor teams? How many do we give to the senior team counties? Exactly as I said there, like, I think there is more points. Like, we did make the point that I think you still need something before the senior final just to kind of get the juices flowing, and, there's space there for it. Why not do it? But I think there's more arguments, like you said, for the minor and the 20s to be away from it, because we have seen no more than Nolan Park with Offaly and Tip, or like this year with the 20s and the minors, that, all those players can walk out going, all this crowd is here for us. They're not here for anything else. This is for us. And like you said, we have the luxury of having, your 20, 25,000 seater stadiums that likes Nolan Park in this, or then in Munster we have the few 40,000s, which will, accommodate that size of a crowd. Why not use them? Why not make days out there? So I do think there is more of an argument to keep doing what we're doing with the 20s and the minors and keep them separate. And no more than, like, Skehill, you had skin in the game. You were involved in terms of actually involved with the teams, and you've seen, what that's like. So yeah, like, I mean, I think there is more of an argument to keep doing that and don't fill the white space with the minor game before the senior game. Like, that was great in itself. The positives to that were, minors. It was always a great privilege for the likes of, I remember playing up there and the seniors run forward, and you felt like you were associated with the senior team by playing. Absolutely, it was brilliant. Obviously, playing in Croke Park, some players will never play there unless they play minor or 20s. But offset that with what we've seen with the likes of Thurles and these hosting the games, I think it does outweigh it at this stage. So, like, yeah, when people are calling now for something to be on before the senior final, I think we need to maybe find something a little bit more creative. And also, as well, I saw something on Twitter there, not to be getting off point, but I saw something on Twitter there during the week where someone was suggesting a full day of what should be broadcast for the senior hurling and football finals. Like, if you watch, let's say, the final of Wimbledon is on, or the FA Cup final, from 9 o'clock that morning, you turn on the television, it's, an old game, it's interviewing old players, it's talking about whatever. It's literally a full event, the full day.
The Super Bowl's a full week.
Yeah.
There's my NFL reference, my friend.
There we are. Nobody's marking that down, no? Like, but so look, I know I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I do, from what I've seen now of the minor and the 20s being separate from it, I do think that's the way to go forward. And it's almost like we're creating our own little, it's like it's creating a sideshow that the GA could actually really make a big thing now. Like, let's say it's in Thurles this year, but why not, Park Equive the next year, the Gaelic Grounds, and it moves, and it's almost like the Ploughing Championships, second reference to Ploughing Championships today, where it moves around and people get to go, and you bring that to Tullamore, you bring it, you bring it down to the Gaelic Grounds, wherever suitable, and they benefit from it. So why not? Why not keep doing what we're doing?
Yeah, well, we had an email that came into a slight tangent and off the ball last week, which I think could be very adaptable. I think it works for the hurling. It's a little bit more difficult for the football. But the idea, Skehill, was revive the Railway Cup, but have it as an exhibition game on the All-Ireland Final day. And I reckon you could do the Railway Cup in the hurling, because what you could do is the Ulster teams could play with Leinster and the Kerry players could play with Munster. Galway will be with Leinster because of the association with the Leinster Championship now at this stage. And what you do is you have two provincial teams, call them Leinster and Munster, but allow the Ulster players to play there. If there's Connacht players who are of standard outside of Galway, they could play with Leinster as well. Let Kerry play with Munster and have a one-off game and play that beforehand. You've no demand for tickets.
Yeah, we did something similar. Let's say you were playing Murph as well. Did you play
2013? Yeah,
we did. Yeah, we played. So Clare played Cork obviously in the replay.
Yeah,
that year's final, and then Murph and I were playing with Leinster, and we played Munster in like, I suppose it was an exhibition game. Maybe it was just 15 minutes aside. I can't remember what it was, but like that's And from memory, there was a good crowd sitting down watching that game.
There was, yeah.
Because again, you top talent on show. So I have no problem. You call the Raven Cup, call whatever you want, but like that kind of type of exhibition game, that like even the players who would participate, they'd love to participate.
Yeah.
Love to, no problem.
I remember actually, not to tell a story, but after that game, we obviously we talked out in the Cusick stand dressing room, and we left for gear there. So we said, "Look, we'll get it after the game." And obviously, Clare won, and we kind of watched a bit of the celebration. Said, "Right, we'll head around here now and get our gear." They wouldn't let us down out of the stand because we were all dressed in our jeans and our t-shirts. We were like, "Listen, we want to get our gear." And I was like, "Get what gear?" We're like, "Oh, we were playing there before the game." He's like, "What are you talking about?" It was myself, Richie Hogan, Lee Chin, someone else. And I was like, I'm having none of it. We're like, honestly, go down to the dressing room. My gear is there. I think Liam Rush was there as well. And I was like, I don't care. I don't know where you're coming up with this story. So we were like, Jesus Christ, how do we get down? So we rang someone anyway, and they let us down. And we got down to it anyway. And we were going for a few points after the game. So we were like, what are we going to do? And Richie was like, do you know what, actually, we might just leave it here. Like, we need to get a few bits. We're like, do you know what, we'll just leave it here and we'll try and get it Monday morning or Tuesday morning because we're not going to walk out with our gear now. But Lee Chin was like, actually...
all my stuff's there.
All my stuff is there, and I have to give my gear bag off to my mum. I'm hurling tomorrow night, something like this. So he had to give it to like his parents. So we walked down to Jones's Road, and like Lee Chin was walking down in his going out gear, but also with his hurling bag over the shoulder with two hurls in the All-Ireland crowd afterwards, the Clare and Cork fans. And we were just saying to him, like, "Jeez, you'll do that for attention, won't you? Lads know you're Lee Chin. Like, you don't have to walk down with your Wexford for gear." And he was actually raging then because he was like, Jesus, I didn't think this one through at all. But they are a good idea. I don't know, but lads laugh at it. But I remember the over 40s games used to play years ago. That's kind of gone now as well. But that'd be some crack if there's an over 40s game. Skehill, me and you aren't too far away from it.
Oh, Jesus, of all the things I thought I'd hear come out of your mouth, over 40s, I want them.
Tell me it's a terrible idea. Tell me it's a terrible idea that you wouldn't like to see.
Go on. What we do? We'll give them 5 points for the game too. And I'd say, right, lads, have 5 points now. Go
absolutely. Mike lads up. Mike up. Larry Gorman and the boys. Send out lads and just hurl away a bit of crack. Like, why not? I don't know. Yeah, like certainly Railway Cup makes sense before. Yeah, it does make sense.
By the way, Murph, there's no appetite for the Railway Cup in semi-finals and the final afterwards anymore. Like when it wound up in 2017, I think it had a few years where it had felt like the prominence and the sheen was gone compared to the years before. Like I remember lads used to talk about playing the Railway Cup in the 60s and 70s, and because there were so few championship games, often lads outside of the big few counties didn't get to play against the very best all that often. So I think the Railway Cup had a certain romance about it. Yeah. But in recent years, I would say over the last 20 years, the Railway Cup never really felt like it had that prominence. I think this is actually a really good way of sneaking it back in.
It's a good way, yeah. It definitely is a good way because, look, there was times as well where I vaguely remember that the Railway Cup, I think, would have been played in late December, kind of. It changed dates, but I do remember kind of getting calls that, you know, kind of short notice that it was going to be on in a week's time in December or something. And like, lads are kind of gone to the four corners at that stage and using their time, you know, like going off on weekends or doing whatever. So it was tough to round lads up. So maybe because, like, let's say after, granted, you're going to have a few lads going to America after knocked out the championship and different things. But if you play the Railway Cup just after teams are knocked out, but they're not going anywhere yet because the club championships are coming up, you'll still have players around that and you'll still muster together, you know, good teams. So definitely. And I think if you're going in saying, like, is there anything on before the match? And even if there was some sort of hybrid of, like, let's say Ulster and Leinster and Connacht and Munster together playing against each other, I mean, you're going to see savage players on the pitch and people will go in, like you said, they're going to have a look. They're going to see, you know, the likes of your Patrick Horgan playing with, I was going to say Liam Rush because he was in my head there from the last story. But, you know, if you're going to see players across the board playing and just having fun and playing away, happy days. It probably is the window. If you're looking to get it back going, that could be the shop window to do it.
Boom. Motion carried. You can decouple the Joe McDonagh, bring back the Railway Cup final on All-Ireland Hurling.
You can take it for granted now it's going to be played before the All-Ireland final next year. That's the influence Electric Picnic has on us. We've delusions of grandeur at this stage.
Absolutely. And also put the Jubilee team back out at half-time. Stop this 2:45 thing.
Yeah. It's such a waste. It's no offense to it, but like you have to have these boys at half-time in the senior match. Well,
you can time it as well, because the teams go in for the best part of 15 minutes on All-Ireland final day.
Yeah.
So what you do is you bring the Jubilee team out, you have them pretty much ready to go when the half-time whistle goes. You bring them out, you give them the respect that they deserve, put it as part of the TV coverage. Like, let TV take their first break if they want, and then come back and the Jubilee team are coming out. Show them on the pitch, let them have their moment and their photograph. As they come off, bring out the go games at that point and let the kids have their moment on the pitch as well. And then let the kids finish up and bring the teams back out. Happy days. I'm not asking for the Super Bowl halftime show here, but there's not a huge amount of coordination to have the Jubilee team and then to bring out the go games kids after that. And everyone gets the best of both.
But to be fair, like you're saying, you're not asking for the Super Bowl halftime show, but it goes to show they can put a stage on the pitch and cover the whole thing and bring on 5,000 fans and get them off, and the pitch is immaculate and it's fine. So surely we can herd out a heap of boys there in suits for 10 minutes. That's all it is, like, while there's a big crowd there. We can definitely do it.
It's definitely achievable. So you opened up the Pandora's box there, Skehill, by giving us a few different talking points for Moment of the Year. Moment of the Year for me, I'm going to keep pretty simple, and it's not purely down to one moment in a game, but it's Westmeath going 17 points down away to Wexford with all their injuries and coming back and winning and pulling off probably the most important result and definitely one of the biggest results in their history. I know ultimately they went down, but it was one of those remarkable moments where an underdog had their day this year, Murph.
Yeah, in fairness, that was a great one. And like for that brief moment, I remember seeing the celebrations afterwards. I'm fairly sure that wasn't on telly either. That was one that was not covered, wasn't it?
It surely wasn't. I was working on the radio coverage of it. And
because I remember obviously enough the uproar and all this afterwards. But like seeing the celebrations, because there was clips on the Sunday game then of the celebrations afterwards. And look, that was huge for those Westmeath lads. Obviously, look, a low point for the Wexford lads letting that slip go and was part of Wexford's, I suppose, poor year. But nevertheless, you can't take it away from Westmeath. Like, what a moment for them and what a marker for them to go and win it. And look, as a standalone match to win and feel good about, that was brilliant for Westmeath. And it's a great memory. What's
your moment of the year then, Murph?
I've changed it actually since we've come on air. Yeah, initially I was looking at John Conlon, just saying man the match against Limerick, like a lad who's 34 years of age. Like again, not to say that age comes into it, but look, it does as well. And on his brother's wedding day, John Conlon, best man. Like it kind of can only happen in the GAA where something like this happens. The lad goes off and performs. Or plays in a match, gets man of the match, and goes back to the wedding as a hero. It's just a great story. So I'm going to give that as an honourable mention. It was a great moment. But since you were speaking about Killian Buckley's goal, I was only thinking about it myself. Look, again, from my own point of view, it was just, I suppose, knowing Killian and knowing, the effort he's put in over the last few years, and even seeing the interview he gave afterwards where, he got very emotional. And, a lot of people would maybe, I suppose, be quite cynical to say, oh, look, does Leinster mean this much or whatever, and all these things. And I think I saw a lot of people coming out afterwards. He just gave a very honest interview, and he's a player who's not interviewed a whole lot. He's not a fellow who puts himself out there. He just goes about his business, and he's a great lad. But like you said, Will, you described it really well there. Unlikely fella to get the ball, had a look around. It wasn't even that he decided, I'm going for goal here. Had a look around, and then just, wasn't perfect, but it went in, and that's all that matters. And his celebrations afterwards, there was so much with that, and because I suppose I know the fella and I know how much he's gone through and his dedication to it, he's just a great lad, that for him to have his moment there was huge. He'll remember that for the rest of his days. Regardless what he does, he'll remember that for the rest of his days. So,
Murph, can I ask you to elaborate a bit when you say what he's gone through? Has he been through anything injury-wise, or what is it?
Well, from Buckley, from when he was young, he would have, I remember his hips gave him problems when he was younger, and he would have had to put in a lot of work when he was about 18, 19, if my memory serves me correct. And he came onto the panel, and he was just a very humble fella. He came on, I think he got man of the match in the league final. I think we played Cork, and he was marking Sean Oak. We were only talking about it actually at his wedding, because I think around the same time Sean Oak had been on off the ball, and I was talking to his dad about it. And obviously we're pulling out stories, myself and Paddy Hogan, Colin and David Herty were chatting to his dad, and we're saying, geez, I remember the league final in 2012 where he marked Sean Ogue. And his father was like, yeah, like, so we were going, here's our young fella on Sean Ogue, like one of the most revered players. And I think he was man of the match that day. And, you know, from starting from there, like Buckley's feet never came off the ground. He just kept going about his business. He came on in the semi-final against Tip that year when Michael Rice got the bad injury, and he's just gone from height to height, and he was captain of Kilkenny. We didn't win the All-Ireland. But like Bucks just always went about his business. And like Herity described it best, where he's the type of fella that would take the inside out of a roll before he eats it. Like everything just has to be perfect with him in terms of his preparation and what he does. But none of it is for show. Like it's all just so he can do the best he can, you know, put his best foot forward. That's all it is, like, you know. So there's a certain factor of that that's just endearing about a person, where it's just very honest, like, you know, it's just the way he goes about it. So for that, and I think even meeting fellow players that would have finished with Kilkenny, like, you know, Taggy or Eddie Brendan, these lads, like we were all kind of under the same, I suppose, had the same feelings when he scored it. It's like, couldn't happen to a nicer fella. Like you just was going, brilliant. Sometimes, you know, sport is shit. Sometimes hurling has the worst days going, but then some days things just work out brilliantly. Like, so that was one of us, particularly for lads who know Killian, who are like, do you know what, like, fucking hurling is great sometimes, like, you know.
Now you have me on his side now. No, I'm right behind him.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to do well.
Yeah, do you know. So no, look, it was only when you were talking, Will, about it there, I think that I was there going, Jesus, if I don't mention that. Ironically, not my goal of the year, but my moment of the year. So.
Well, look, you found a way to get it in at the end of it, and just another little dig in at Skehill as well by the end of it. We have a couple of other categories to do.
Right.
But if you don't mind, I might do this category before we do the last two, which was that a load of people asked us to do a combined Limerick and Kilkenny team. So Limerick of now, the Limerick of the Roaring 20s, and Kilkenny of the noughties. So we're comparing two eras of 4 in a row. Paul's reclused himself from picking the team because he wants to say something neutral.
Now, to be fair, I didn't. Like, Will, you texted into the WhatsApp and you said, Skehill, do you fancy a list? And I was like, grand, my name isn't being mentioned here. I won't have to show my bias. But I did hold my hands up before we started. I said, look, it is the one time I would like to feel that I'm fairly balanced and impartial. I try my best to be. But I think the fact that, you know, looking at this, I'd find it very hard. And I'd actually just find it very hard, you know, splitting hairs here. I think I'd come to a dead end on some of them because it'd be so tough. And like, do you know what's funny as well, just to throw it in there, is that oftentimes you're trying to pick these teams, like this Limerick team undoubtedly is just absolutely incredible. And, you know, if they do the 5 in a row, as far as everybody would be concerned, that's the greatest team of all time. You know, if they do that, that's the question answered. But, you know, you'd see lots of people arguing maybe online or different things saying that, you know, if you're picking a team of the year for this year, for example, some lads go, oh, you can't leave out, you know, 4-time or 5-time All-Ireland winner, blah, 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 and, you know, whatever. So if you're picking this team alone, as Skehill is doing, by the current Limerick team now and that Kilkenny team, I think that Kilkenny team probably had 7 or 8 All-Ireland. So you have to take that out of it. Like, you have to look at it objectively, really, and go, well, what do players bring to each position? So I think it's even tougher now, Pickett. I think when this Limerick team is finished, it'll be a little bit easier. But even now, I think it's a tougher thing because you're kind of half projecting with this Limerick team as well, which is just not easy to do. But anyway, Skehill.
You can throw pelters at Skell's team.
I just abuse them from as soon as Nicky Quaid is out. For fuck's sake.
You are the hurler on the ditch for this one.
I'm just waiting here, right? Need a
Wingback on Twitter sent us this team originally, which is how we kind of just started the idea of doing it. And a few other people sent them. So here's Wingback's team. So there we go. He's got Nicky Quaid in. Gone with Sean Finn, JJ, and Jackie Tyrrell as the full back line. Tommy's in there with Declan Hannon and Dermot Burns. Chaff Fitzpatrick, Keane Lynch in midfield. Garrod Hegarty, along with Shefflin and Owen Larkin in the half forwards. And then you've got Eddie Brennan, Richie Power, and Aaron Gillan complete his team. Not a bad selection to start with, Skell, but I have a feeling you won't be exactly the same.
Yeah, so I tried to, similar to the draft, I tried to set a list of parameters here. Because I felt myself going a bit sideways here. See where the head up straight away.
Parameters. You've been given one. Pick the team of 2000. There's your parameter. Go on anyway. Go on.
So I'm got Nicky Quaid in goals, right?
Okay.
The Nicky Quaid or PJ Ryan, and I went with Nicky Quaid. Now the formation is 3-3-2-4-2. That's the formation. That's the lines. I didn't go on a traditional of 3-3-2-3-3. Okay. I
think that's fine. I think we can accept that some players will move out of the full forward line and so on. So go on.
So I have Jackie Tyrrell, JJ Delaney, and Barry Nash. Then in a
say that again. Sorry.
You've JJ.
Jackie Tyrrell, JJ Delaney. Change that 3, and then Barry Nash.
Why Nash over Finn then? Given that's the difference straight away.
Because I said, right, if I need man marking jobs and I need strength, I've got Jackie and I've got JJ. Now I want to let it go forward and play the ball out. I want to let it be sweeper, or I want him to shake sharp. And I was like, that's Barry Nash for me. So like it came down to really a question of like Barry Nash was actually JJ was first, then I put in Barry, and I was like, right, Jackie or Sean. And I went to Jackie. Jackie was a class, in fairness. Like Sean Finn is unreal. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Like when you're combining these two teams, you're talking about again minor percentages, very very minor, single digits.
Okay, before we go to the half forward line, Murph, do you take any issue with Quaid being in goal? Firstly,
no. Look, in fairness, Quaid's excellent. Like so like I'll be splitting hairs for all these now, but no, go on, fair away. Quaid's in goal.
Okay, full back line.
He's dying. He's itching, Will. I can see him. He's itching to pick it apart.
Do you know the one thing that's going through my head? And I just be honest, is like meeting like randomly I'll bump into the boys going, you bollocks. Like granted, they might look at this. Like, why wouldn't you put me on the goal? Like, just name your team, and then I'll just deal with the rat of why I didn't argue for all the ex-players I played. That's not making it. But go on.
It's part of the deal. Full back line. Do you have an issue with any of the full back line you picked there, Murph?
So Jackie, JJ, and Barry.
It's tough. No, like I'll be honest, I probably won't have like as a starting point. I won't have an issue with any players you put in because they're brilliant. It's just that you'd be trying to figure out, okay, well, what dynamic have you got going on in that full back line? Like, as in, that's a well balanced full back line. Like, you don't have like for like players there. In fairness, Sean and Jackie would kind of bring very similar traits there. Like they're tidy, they get involved, and do you know what, they do the kind of same purpose in that they break up a lot of play, they get in primary possession, and they launch the attack going forward. Then, so it's tough. And both of them, I think, Jackie has the few All-Irelands this day. I think both of them have the 4 All-Stars. So, like, I mean, if you're bringing it down to that stuff, like they're in the same category as well. Like, but JJ, like, I mean, JJ, you have to have JJ wherever you're going. I'd nearly put JJ in the full back line and half back line. So, like, that's just my advice. But, yeah, no, in fairness, that's a well-balanced full back line. Dan Morrissey, tough one. Mike Casey, tough one. Noel Hickey. But anyway, Nick Kavanagh, go on.
Go on, your first 3 are safe, Skehill. Go on.
Safe, go on.
Good. So what Murphy's trying to say is he agrees with me. Okay.
Yes.
What did he say to you? Go on.
In a roundabout way, yes.
Now, this is where things get a bit tricky now from here on, right? So I have Tommy Walsh, Jimmy Burns, Kyle Hayes. The halfback line gave me the most headaches, lads. I couldn't.
So you've moved Burns into an unnatural position, or are you going to play Hayes at 6 here, where he hasn't played for a while? Who plays 6?
I actually have Burns at 6, to be honest.
Okay.
And people are arguing, you're taking him out of his strongest position.
You are.
I just still think he'll do the same thing at 6 as he'll do at number 5. Now, the trouble is, where I got caught was, right, if I put Burns out of the wing and put in a centre back, let's say Declan Hannon, or put in John Tennyson, Brian Hogan, any of these type of lads, right, I'm going to get caught with Kyle Hayes. The reason being is the forwards, whereas the next likely position for him, I can't put him into it. I can't fit Kyle Hayes in the forwards. So I said, right, Kyle Hayes, you're going back at 7. Jimmy Burns is going in 6, and the rest of you can shut up. Simple as that.
Well, I know that the Limerick fans are going to turn around, Skehill. They're going to say, where's our 5-time All-Ireland winning captain? And I still have him as captain, by the way. He lifted the cup with Hayes. So
he's the first sub coming on.
Or lifted the cup with Cian Lynch even before.
It's as much as I can do here, honestly. We're talking about...
So, okay, so Hannon doesn't make the team. You're happy enough to move Burns across because you want Hayes to be at wing back and you want Burns to be in your team.
Yeah, it came down to really, like, is Hayes going to be the team? Categorically, yes. I think anyone, whether you're from Limerick or Kilkenny, are going to say Kyle Hayes in your team. So, is he in his team? If it came down to a decision between Hayes and Hannon, I'm picking Hayes. That's just the size of it. So, I think the rest, I think it'll all make sense. It'll all come together, lads, when I name the rest of the team, okay? It'll all come together.
Right. There's bolters here in midfield, so go on. Before
this is the hardest
thing to give us the midfield.
I went for Michael Finlay and Cian Lynch.
Okay.
I tossed hard with in fairness, Che was excellent, don't get me wrong, but I would have had Michael Finlay above him. Power, pace, scoring, you name it, defence. I just thought Michael Finlay was awesome, in my opinion. And then sure, Cian Lynch, again, if he was in the forwards, an unbelievable forward drops out. So I said he's in midfield because he's savage. And sure, that's where he started off, wasn't it? He started off midfield.
He did, yeah. He was in his midfield anyway in 2019 when he played us.
And 18, 19, yeah. It's only when he moved into forward years after. Now the half forward line is kind of a 4-man situation, right?
Okay.
So I have Owen Larkin, Henry Shefflin, Garage Hegarty, and TJ Reid.
Hold on. Larkin, Hegarty, TJ, and who's your other?
And so Larkin, Shefflin, Hegarty, and TJ Reid. Shefflin's in the middle. Larkin is dropping off, and then TJ and Hegarty are wide. Larkin's like a third midfielder job.
The only one I'm going to throw a spanner in the works for you here that people will argue against is that TJ wasn't established on the team at that stage. Obviously, he's exceptional, and he played against Waterford. I don't think he played against Limerick. I could be wrong on that. Maybe he did.
No, I don't think so.
But that's the only thing now. Before the comments kick off, I'm just going to flag.
I would definitely associate him. I would definitely associate him, Skehill, with the next run that Kilkenny had more so than the 4 in a row.
I knew this was going to happen. I said, I looked through all the Kilkenny teams, and I said he didn't even start at the final in 2008, let's say, or 9. He actually came on.
I think he came on. He scored about 5 points against, or 3 or 4.
I was like, I'll deal with it. And then the inside line, and I don't care. Anybody says about this, is Aaron Gallen and Richie Hogan.
Yeah.
No Eddie Brennan?
Nope. That felt like, do you know when they asked Roy Keane who's the best manager he ever had, and he said Brian Clough. Not Alex Ferguson. I just said Brian Clough.
Jesus.
But come here, I actually started on a second team then, but I started from the forwards back, which was kind of ridiculous. And sure,
the parameters were the lads who didn't make it.
The second team, I had, and we're talking about unbelievable players here. We're talking about Richie Power. We're talking about Eddie Brennan. We're talking about tipping Tom Morrissey. We're talking about generational players too. Chad Fitzpatrick. I couldn't fit them all. Michael Rice. Then Declan Hannigan. So it's just that's what we're talking about. You can make 2 teams out of this. So go on. So I left.
So you're ready to defend yourself on this one when people come after you and say, well, TJ and Richie were better beyond that 4 in a row team, but you've put them in.
That
will happen.
Oh, it'll happen, right? Yeah, it'll happen. It'll be argued, and I'll argue back.
Your response is, I'm arguing on behalf of the people here. Go on. Your response will be,
but they were simply effective. They were still effective. You know what I mean? So they're on the team. They're on the panels. They were there. They were participating. They were part of those teams. So why shouldn't they be considered? I know you might say,
no, it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah. But I suppose the formation people I thought would argue with more. Why are you having 4 lads in the half hurling? But again, I have a game.
I'm giving them a chance to argue with Skehill because it's not out. The podcast hasn't been released yet.
Because
the people, are you talking about myself and Will?
I think so.
I think you'll find, and actually, I encourage, if anything, people will say something in the podcast going, "What? Why is this? What's your man actually who owns? Does he own Chelsea at the moment?" And I saw a story during the week that he said to Thomas Tuchel, you should play a 4-4-3 formation.
Oh, Todd Bowley, yeah.
Todd Bowley. So it sounds like that now. In fairness, you have the numbers right. You have 2 inside, yeah. So
that's an 8-7 Limerick split, is it?
Kilkenny split
towards Kilkenny 8-7. Okay.
Yeah, fair play.
Well, look, it's up for debate.
The conversation is open now, anyway.
You've thrown it wide open. Last few questions here, then. Favorite moment on the pod of the year, Murph? What was it for you?
Winning the tickets for my Kilkenny man in the podcast live in Dublin. On the subject I did not pick, and Skehill, I feel Skehill was actually favoured in this by giving the New England Patriots, whereby he could show off his resounding knowledge.
Oh, I won this, right? You got help from everybody, okay?
Who went home with the tickets?
You see that you got help from everybody. The whole couch was helping you. And I was like, this is ridiculous. My poor fella.
No, I didn't. No, for people who didn't see it, was obviously right. The quiz wasn't released, but Canning started shouting at myself. I can't even think of his name. He's from Ballaraggett, but started shouting at us. But I was full sure he was on your side. Why wouldn't I think he's on your side and that he's trying to throw us off? He didn't give you any help. So I was like, there's no way Canning is trying to help me do Skehill, and he actually was. So, but I didn't know. I had no reference. So I was like, right, grand.
Now, to the lad's credit, Skehill absolutely killed it in the New England Patriots round, to his credit.
Yeah.
And it was very tight in the end. We went to a tiebreaker, and it was, I think the question was the amount of All-Stars that have been won by Limerick players since 2018.
And do you know what the beauty of it was the fact that you asked Skehill first was...
I know, and you got to say higher.
The All-Star. So I just get to go higher or lower. If I just go one lower, I win. And I did win. Oh, it was so good. No, granted, we were a nice bit off. I said 44, you said 46, and it was 36. Was it 36?
I think it was. Yeah, it was in the 30s. Yeah, so
I thought it was more than that, but yeah.
We're losing.
The thing is, I won.
Well, that's the most.
So that's my moment of the podcast.
My moment of the podcast, and if you want to see it, you can go back and watch the Joe Canning video from the live podcast to get the full story. And the clip has gone all over the place at this stage. But for me, it's the fucking dogs in Aldi, the Richie Hogan story, Skehill. I think it's top class. It is.
It's one of those stories with, like, it's when I hear it, I know exactly what's coming. But I laugh harder every time.
Oh, it's so good.
I keep laughing harder and harder. And I must say, actually, it brings me on to, I met Joe Connolly at Jimmy Cooney's funeral, God rest him, on the weekend there, and he passed me, and Joe Connolly said, "We in our islands lately," and just kept walking. So he obviously heard it too. Our range of listenership is broad, yeah. But that the fucking dog in the Zelda is absolutely brilliant. Every time I hear it, I laugh harder.
Ah, jeez, it's
I
brilliant.
can just picture Richie with the feet up at home, like just everything's great, peace and quiet.
He's falling apart around him, and he hasn't a clue. Yeah.
Oh, lad.
Richie all over, yeah.
Why do I think, Skehill, you're going to pick the Aran Islands as your moment of the year then?
I'm not going to pick the Ireland. I love the reaction. I'm going to pick Johnny Glynn, putting him in the team.
Yeah.
I put him at 14. That got a ridiculous reaction. I just remember Murphy, your reaction, Johnny fucking Glynn. Like, where are we going with this?
Such a bolter. I nearly walked away. I nearly had to stand up and walk around after. I was gone.
But even the road show in general, I suppose again, that was a success if you ask me, and just there was loads of moments in that and stories and crack that you could pick from. I'd say there's 15 different choices.
And do you know what we actually didn't speak about afterwards, which we found out after the fact, was the Premier Review boys were there. I think they were there. We didn't know.
They definitely got a photograph anyway of Skehill in the tip jersey.
And we didn't know that, Skehill in the tip jersey. We had no idea that he was going to be there. So fair play to them. Fair play for coming up.
Yeah. Here's one from Seamus Bridgman that I had to get in because he was trying to be nice, and I'm not sure if he was. Great season, men. Some good laughs during the way. Limerick flag. I rewatched the 2018 final recently. Was Limerick's first goal the worst goal that Skehill conceded in his career? He made up for it in the second half. That's what I mean by his being nice. With a brave save from Flanagan. Sorry for bringing up old wounds. Was it the worst goal you've ever conceded, Skehill? His wife is gone, isn't it?
It is.
I don't know whether the Wi-Fi knowingly paused there, but
I thought he was
such a
flicking it off.
dramatic pause.
When I heard the name come up, Will, I texted the wife and said, "Put on Netflix, put on Wi-Fi, put on everything, and get this Wi-Fi on."
I don't know. I think he was trying to be genuine there.
Look, I don't mind at all. It's a very thick skin, but it was the worst goal I've ever conceded, absolutely. And was there a question in that? That was the question, was it?
I think the question was, was it the worst goal you ever conceded?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. 100%.
Short and sweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Next question.
I'll quick fire through these before we finish up. So, D. Bulfin, this one for you, Murph. Would the current Clare panel have won in Ireland in the past 5 years if they had a different manager?
I don't know. I'd be more inclined to say no, because I think like Brian Lohan has gotten a huge amount out of them, and there was times, if you go back maybe 3 years ago, even actually, do you know what? There's one match which sticks out to me. The time John Conlon went back to centre back, Clare were playing up in Corrigan Park, and Antrim bet them. I think that was 2 years ago. I think it was the start of last year, maybe the previous year. And there was people talking that Brian Lohan should walk away at that stage, but he's after getting such a huge amount out of Clare that I don't think a lot of people saw it coming. So I don't know, like outside of the obvious of like Paul Kinnerk and John Kiley being over them or whatever, I don't think Brian Lohan or anybody could have got a better result out of Clare. Like, granted, that doesn't answer the question of whether Clare feel that they should have won, like, let's say, last year's semi-final or this year's semi-final. That's, I think, is a different question, because Brian Lohan got them there to that stage. But no, I don't think so. I think, and it's a compliment to Brian Lohan and his team, that they have gotten a huge amount out of that Clare team and brought on a few more players as well. So I think, to be fair to them, I'd be more inclined to say no. What they've gotten has been really good. Granted, Clare fans will feel they should have won an All-Ireland, but maybe that's just not in the tank for them at the moment. But look, I think Brian Lohan has done a great job with them, and he's had them really well. And look, they've beaten a Limerick team in a round robin stage, and they've had a few really good markers. So I don't think so.
Okay. This is one that's a dream for you, Skehill, from Real Share Aiden. In a Premier League style transfer window, which hurler in Ireland right now would demand the highest transfer fee?
Yeah.
Now, this reminds me of another great moment on the pod this year, which was Cian Lynch is packing his bags for Antrim. Tony Kelly's going to Westmeath.
Yeah.
Up the road, yeah. There's a lot of factors here, right? So I always think of these questions, right? I'm signing this man now to a 5-year contract. Yeah. So that's why I automatically have to rule out the TJs this world, to be honest, right? And I'm thinking about someone who's got a bit of longevity coming. So I'm looking towards a Glynn and I'm looking towards a Kyle Hayes. I think they would have the largest fee. It's hard for me to argue. Tony Kelly, again, I'm looking at the age, not old by any means, but I'm thinking, you know, I'm going Kyle Hayes at the moment. I just think he's unreal, to be honest.
I think your number one draft pick, Cian Lynch, would go for big money as well, because I think any team would want to build a team around him.
He would have cost 100%, but yeah, fuck, that's a hard question. If you ask me tomorrow, now I could say Cian Lynch. You know,
Murph, who would you say would be the most expensive?
Yeah, you'd have to go Cian Lynch straight off the bat. But like, I'm just trying to think of other teams to think that like Cian Lynch makes a high performing team perform even better, because he links it all together. But some teams just need a really good player to lift like everybody around them, and like, you know, just to do the basics really well. And I'm trying to think, does that come into it? Obviously, a factor is that you want age as well, but the likes of Diarmuid Burns as well. Like, I mean, I think a lot of teams, if they had a right half back who's scoring potentially 7 or 8 points a game, so consistent on the frees, and is brilliant driving forward, like, he'd be up there. I don't think he'd be the top, but I'd have to say Cian Lynch for this one, just because another factor as well is how many players can do what player X does. You know, if you pick a player and say you can think of 5 or 6 other players that also do that kind of brings down their value a little bit. Very few players can do what Cian Lynch does to link it all together. So I just think he has to be the top, and as well, like, he's years ahead of him. Like, you know. Yeah,
good thing that the JP McManus money is there, so they can keep hold of him. Suggestion for next year's fantasy.
That
was a joke, Robert.
like to distance myself from you here.
I wasn't trying to, red rag to a bull. It was meant to be a joke about the fact that got a benefactor. Never mind. Suggestion for next year's fantasy: do a draft episode. Each player is different players. RN80. I think we might do one of them next year. Okay, I like this one to finish. Paul 6561, because everyone will forget if we do them now rather than in March. Name the 3 teams to come out of Munster next year. The drive for 5 is on for Limerick. Abu. Who are your 3 teams to come out of Limerick, lads?
Clare, Cork, Limerick.
Bloody hell, that was quick.
I'm just going to go with it. I think you can overthink it. And again, have to give, like, last year I left Clare out of it, I'm fairly sure, based on the question mark over the semi-final last year. So sorry, I left them out this year based on the semi-final for last year. So I think the equivalent of that you kind of have to say about Tipperary this year. Like, I mean, they were performing really well during the league, but probably just hit their peak at the wrong time. So give credit. Like, Cork were very unlucky to be knocked out. Not unlucky. Look, they only won 1 game, so like, you get what you deserve really there. But Cork are showing savage promise, I think, at the moment. Limerick are Limerick, and then again, Waterford, we don't know where they're going to go from here. You'd like to think that they're going to step back up and really, I suppose, get back into the mix of things. Tipperary have great potential, but again, they just fell flat when it came most important. So you have to give it to, I think you just have to give it to Limerick, Cork and Clare.
Okay, I'm going Limerick, Clare, Tip just to get out of Cork. I think the top 2 again will be Limerick and Clare. Skehill, for you?
I think if so, it's reversing the fixtures. That means Limerick go to Clare this year coming, or 2024, and that means Limerick go down to Cork, don't they?
They do.
So I don't see Cork coming out of the group. So I'm going to go Limerick, Clare. I'm going to go with you on Tip as well.
Okay, there's a lot of time between now and then, but that's our colours to the mast now in August of 2023. Come back in March of next year, and I'm sure we'll have changed quite a bit between now and then. And the other one thing I just wanted to mention before we went is that Edwina Shanahan sent me a lengthy message last night, which was really, really well laid out, and it's something I'm definitely going to bring up in the Camogie coverage that we have this week. So Cork, unbelievably impressive against Waterford in the Camogie final yesterday. I only got to see it today. And almost my watching of it was coloured a little bit by Edwina's comments, where she was having a look at how Cork are playing a tremendous amount like Limerick at the moment, and particularly Liam Cronin, their hurling coach, and the influence that he's had. And this was kind of half in my head already, because I was chatting to Adrian O'Sullivan, the former Dublin and Offaly manager, has managed UL, is involved with Galway this year. And he was making the point that Amy Lee's puckouts are very like Nikki Quaid's in the style of puckouts. I definitely saw that looking throughout the game. And Laura Tracy sits in position an awful lot like Declan Hannon. So I was kind of thinking, you know what, there is a similarity to this. And then she was pointing out Amy O'Connor, who got the hat-trick yesterday, plays a tremendous amount like Aaron Gallan as well. So maybe there's something in this. Maybe the blueprint of the way that Limerick are playing at the moment is now being taken up by some of the Camogie teams. I wish I hadn't read her email before seeing the match, and then I kind of got that comment. It's funny, when I watch it then I'm like, oh, this is very similar to the way that Limerick moved the ball between the lines, and the fact that Cork were so dominant as well had a certain Limerickness about it as well. But might be one for the comments, and might be one to watch out for next year, that Cork Camogie are playing a bit like Limerick. And what an All-Ireland for Cork to have beaten the last two All-Ireland champions in the quarter-final, semi-final, and then to produce the champagne performance on the big day against Waterford as well. Incredibly well done. First O'Duffy Cup since 2018 for Cork. That's where we leave it, lads, for this season. Kind of weirdly, I'll see you in a few weeks' time in person. But we'll be back for season 3 in the new year as well. James Skehill, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. It's hard to think. It's been, what, 30 episodes or whatever it is?
I think we're on 37 today, yeah.
37 episodes. Mother of God, yeah. I didn't mean, no, I meant that from a time perspective. I meant how
I thought you meant that from, I can't believe I had to go through 37 of these.
No, I was just going to say, like, Will, you were just saying good luck to Skehill there, and he went off into like his soliloquy, like he was going to get real emotional there. So I was like, Skehill, saying goodbye to you. Good luck.
No, sorry, my brain's in a different spot. I'm hungry. I'm getting angry.
Yeah, he's not hungry for more pods.
Right, we'll forgive you.
Great to see you.
Murph, it's also been a pleasure. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers, lads. See you soon.
OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Board Gosh Energy.
Hurling, it's anyone's game.